Good evening. One thing GB News can claim great credit for is exposing the sheer scale and extent of the grooming gang scandal across the United Kingdom. Dare I say, the Pakistani Kashmiri grooming gang scandal, because in most towns that's what it is. And Charlie Peters, our own Charlie Peters, has done more work on this than any journalist in modern times since Andrew Norfolk first broke the story over a decade ago for the Times. But the funny thing is, of the 50 towns that he's investigated for this and identified clearly grooming gang cases, there's one town, or should I say city, where apparently there's no grooming gang problem at all. It's called London. And here's the mayor, Sadiq Khan.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for your misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If you could spell it out, I can answer.
I mean, that's a level of denial that is almost unbelievable. And by the way, Susan Hall there doing a very, very good job as a Conservative Assembly member. Khan in complete denial. The Met, for the last 20 years, have been in complete denial. Well, Charlie Peters' work has continued. Have a look at this network that he's produced of how the grooming gangs are connected all around the country. It is fascinating. You'll see that not every single road leads to London, but many roads do lead to London. And Charlie Peters wrote a very big piece in the Daily Mail today. This is just one quote from it. In the course of investigating the grooming gangs phenomenon, as a reporter for GB News, I've interviewed dozens of victims across the country. I am convinced that through a combination of naive inaction on the part of Metropolitan Police and local politicians, the same pattern of abuse has been repeated in the capital. In one ongoing case involving a pregnant 15-year-old girl, I was informed the victim told her social workers she was in love with one of her abusers. The social worker believes that more than 100 men were involved in her exploitation for years. Yes, folks, we are talking about London. I'm asking you, is this the next great grooming scandal to break? Because I absolutely believe that it is. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong. Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined on this Tuesday evening by my regular panel of Joe Phillips and Sir Ranald Jayawardena. But to begin, Jon Wedger, former Metropolitan Police Detective Constable, and somebody who I understand, Jon, and welcome to the programme.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I understand, but it's very important that you're here, because I understand that 20 years ago, or 2006, you were told to stop investigating the cases of over 50 children.
Well, it was more aggressive and coarse than that. I was told that if I continued to look into it or revealed my findings as one of 2 officers that was dedicated to looking for children involved in what we call a crime of prostitution. I'm not endorsing the term, I'm just saying it was. When I put my findings on an intelligence report and they were submitted to a senior officer, I was told if I continued on my path, I would lose my home, my job and my children. What I had exposed would F the Metropolitan Police, past, present and future. I cannot and will not allow this out, that's what I was told. And I was told that there was nowhere for me to go. And if I classed the attitude of the officer as bullying, he told me that he would not betray fellow rank, nor would they.
So you were basically forced not to do anything?
That was it. I was then removed straight away from the operation, an active operation in which we had dozens of young kids, girls and boys, from the age of 9 to 14, involved in being pimped out on the streets of London, most of which were addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, and some had life-threatening diseases such as AIDS, hepatitis C and contagious tuberculosis.
This is almost back to Dickensian England. And I thought, in the Victorian times we sorted all this out. But it's all come back. Was it different to the grooming gangs in Rochester and Rotherham, which were predominantly Pakistani? Was there a different twist on this?
Yeah, I mean the premise is the same. But we've got to bear in mind that most abuse goes on in the home. 80% of the abuse goes on in the home. A child that's been abused is 6 times more likely to be involved in a trafficking for crime, whatever it might be. Step-parents equate for most of the abuse. But the ones that were, if we could class it, grooming gangs on these girls, we had Jamaican Yardies, we had Albanians, Kosovans, Lithuanians. One of the most prolific pimp, as it were, was a white woman who we managed to get convicted for double figures. She was the first person ever to get convicted under the amended 2003 Sexual Offences Act. But it was as diverse as the population of London.
Yeah, OK. So slightly different to the north.
Yeah, slightly different.
Same problem.
There were Bangladeshis and a few Pakistani gangs, but they were in the areas that more represented their ethnicity.
Now, the Met have now said they're going to reopen 9,000 cases of child exploitation.
Yeah.
Is this, and you went through all this all those years ago, are the Met finally waking up?
Yeah, I was on Talk TV and I did a call out to Sadiq Khan, who in my opinion is beyond redemption on this topic, and also Mark Rowley, because I genuinely believe that Mark Rowley, underneath that...
The boss of the Met.
The boss of the Met.
Yeah. Underneath
that corporate exterior, there is a heart, and I appealed to his heart and said, Mark, do the right thing. Do the right thing. You know, be the hero of the day, turn this around. It's in your power and capabilities, do it. You know I'm not lying. And I challenged Sadiq Khan and Mark Rowley. I said, prove me wrong, because you can't. And it looks like he may have taken heed. Whether he has or not, he is now seems to be doing the right thing.
But the level of denial, you know, I mean, I showed you one clip of the mayor. There's a previous time when he was asked about this, he said, no. The problem is County Lines drugs.
No.
I mean, how can the Mayor of London? He must have known about this.
Yeah, well, of course, you see, but how it works, you need dedicated officers on what's known as a proactive approach. You cannot have what they call fire brigade policing, which is purely reactive. This crime never presents itself in a disorderly or dishonest way like most crime does. This is hidden, it's covert. The Met did have dedicated officers on the Vice unit, but they've shut all that down.
How angry do you feel?
When I saw that clip with Susan Hall being berated by him, and he was engaging in this seminar of semantics or wordplay and ignoring the most vile criminality going, and the disregard and disrespect to victims and survivors of the most appalling crime. You know, when a kid is sexually abused, the damage goes on for 3 generations. And what about the suicides? You know, in order for healing, we need justice. And in order for justice, we need to go out there and nick these people. And I just turn around and say, you know, to the police, to Mark Rowley, just do your job. Do it.
Joe, this is a very powerful...
Yeah, it's awful.
An entirely believable testimony.
Oh, completely. And I've read about Jon and the work that you do now with people, and, you know, you're doing an amazing job. The Met are disgraceful, and they have been for many, many years. And it's not just this. It's a whole load of other things, including sexual abuse in children's homes that were run by local authorities. You know, there has been cover-up after cover-up. I don't think Sadiq Khan committed himself very well in that particular exchange.
Come on. It's far worse than that,
well,
isn't it? Total denial. Pretending the problem doesn't even exist.
I don't think it was total denial, but I think I agree with Jon that he was playing with semantics, and I think on a subject like this, you shouldn't. It's the wrong place. But the fault lies with the police, Nigel, and actually it goes back to what you say, Jon. Sadiq Khan wasn't mayor then. No. You know, it goes back to Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson.
That's true.
You know, and other people. But I think, you know, there is a rot deep at the heart of the Metropolitan Police. I want to ask you a question, though, because a lot of this is linked to drugs. The drugs are used to get the kids involved and dependent, as it has always been with prostitution and pimping. And there is a problem, as we know, County Lines, which does start from London. Do you think it is the drugs? Are the gangs more interested in the money they make from drugs and that the abuse is a sideline, or do you think the two are intertwined?
They're intertwined.
OK.
You know, the drugs are used because that is the glue that keeps the kids going. These girls are passed around crack houses. You know, one of the biggest gangs that was doing it was Jamaican Yardies. You know, men of extreme violence. The crack houses were very, very dangerous places. And the girls were traded for 9-10 rocks at a time. They were just playthings that were used.
Well, that's,
sort of, you know.
that's Randall, this is sick, isn't it? Joe can blame the police, and I do. The previous mayors of London, and we can sort of equate that with the same time frame as Oldham, Rotherham, Barrow-in-Furness, Oxford, the list goes on and on and on. But this mayor of London, his behaviour is disgraceful.
Well, I think, dealing with this issue in that way, letting his personal animosity for Susan Hall get in the way of answering a straight question,
that's a good point.
That is just not right. I think the people of London deserve better. I think he, on reflection, would probably accept that he could have handled that much better himself.
Well, that's not the first time he's been in denial.
True. But I do think the Met has consistently got decisions wrong. Sometimes it's taken forward investigations wrongly, and we saw lots of spurious allegations at certain high-profile people. That was taken forward to the nth degree, and yet these cases involving children have not been. So I think the Met does have a problem in discerning right from wrong and what it should do and what it should not do. But I do think, just one very quick point, I think there's a really interesting point in Charlie's report here, which is that the law is a big problem that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
So he says that when young teenage girls become pregnant as a result of rape, they are unable to step in and inform the family because of rules about confidentiality. That is a really important point that I don't think anyone's been talking about before. If they have, forgive me. I do think that the more we look into this, the more we learn that so many different parts of our system just do not work.
No. John, final thought to you. I mean, the fact that the Met have said in the last couple of days they're going to reopen these 9,000 cases, is this the beginning of an admission they've got this wrong?
Definitely, of course. I think just in the actions alone speak volumes. You know, they have ignored this. It's not just me. There's been many other officers that have dealt with crimes against children, and I call it the algorithm of bullying. If we look back a few years ago, circa the time I blew the whistle, there was a very brave man called Lenny Harper who spoke out about a children's home called Hope de la Garenne in Jersey.
I remember all this.
Yeah, very similar thing. He was bullied as well.
Yeah.
A guy called Mike Veal, Chief Constable Wiltshire, spoke out about kids that were involved, again bullied. So we see it everywhere. It's when it's dealing with children and sex crimes of kids, because it takes crime into a total different genre altogether. It's a deeper argument, and I'll happily explain it, when there's time.
Well, you come back and talk to us on this.
Of course I will.
Because I have a feeling this story is about to become a very, very big story.
Yeah, I think
it's
so
been
too.
buried for far too long.
Yeah.
I thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I'm sorry at home to start the programme with such a sick, awful, appalling story. But you know what? And I saw this yesterday, and I was with one of the grooming gang survivors from Barrow-in-Furness yesterday, and her anger almost now it's almost more what's happened since the abuse and the fact no one's ever got to the truth, the real truth, than it is for what happened to her all those years ago. A spokesperson for the Mayor of London told GB News it is not a cover-up, and instead Sadiq has consistently been clear to the Met that no stone must be left unturned in pursuing justice for the victims of grooming gangs and ensuring the vile perpetrators are brought to justice. The Mayor remains vigilant to emerging and changing threats about child exploitation and will continue to hold the Met to account to ensure it does everything possible to tackle child sexual exploitation in London. What a pity he didn't say that to Susan Hall when she asked him a perfectly civil, reasonable, sensible and grown-up question.